Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Jarvis Podcast, part of the Nonsensical Nonsense Network. Today, I'm reviewing the Porky's 1981 movie, but I'm not alone. I got my buddy and friend, Blazin. Blazin, how are you doing, bro?
I am doing awesome, and I'm looking forward to doing a review on Porky's. It's been one of my kind of favorites since my adolescence. So yeah, this would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of those movies back in the 80s were just able to hit on that time.
I always considered Porky's one of those most favored TNA movies from the '80s. So it was
Oh,
a
oh,
whole
definitely.
genre of TNA movies back then.
Definitely. I mean, it's so funny how a lot of these raunchy comedies started with Animal House, and then in the 80s it was kind of like, well, they kind of did these movies, so let's see if we could bring them a little bit forward a decade and ultimately go a little bit farther. I mean, you had Caddyshack that kind of went a little bit further than some of the movies of those eras in comedy. So I mean, it got to the point where movies were trying to top each other in different decades.
Oh, absolutely. I think this movie was around the time. I mean, it was '81, and movies like that. God, I can't remember when Animal House came out, but I think it was late '70s. I
Late
think
to
so.
mid to late 70s, I think.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's a whole genre of those raunchy comedies that came out around that time that I think a lot of them just became cult classics. So, and just to name a few, like you said, Animal House, Porky's was one, and unfortunately, nothing else comes to my mind right now. But I know they're out there.
Benji, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, it ain't too much of a shit show. I know no Saturdays usually is with the open door challenge, but it is what it is. There's my wifey. Hey, Alyssa, how are you doing? Welcome to the show. But yeah, as you said, with Porky's, it's kind of like a no holds barred comedy movie of the 80s. And I mean, you have Kim Cattrall, you have Bob. It's directed by Bob Clark, who I do believe actually directed a horror movie back in the 70s called Black
Hmm.
Christmas, which is really weird how they're like, hey, we're going to make a really kind of newer adaptation of Animal House in a way. We know you did a horror movie, but could you do this comedy movie for us?
Well, I mean, I
And
think it shows uh, versatility when it comes to directors and writers when they can, go cross genre. I guess.
well, exactly. I mean, and that's why we don't have those directors today. They stick to one genre and then they pretty much are done
Yes.
with that one genre. And if they can't make it, they try to go to a different genre. I mean, heck, Rob Zombie, tried to go from the grindhouse to more, remakes to TV spin-offs and couldn't really do it.
Yeah.
And so with Porky's, what you get is people or kids, teenagers that want to have some fun, and they go to local, uh, God, I don't even know what you would call it.
Stripper
Probably
bar, man. It was a
stripper
it
bar.
was a
Yeah.
stripper bar, and just so everybody knows, the movie was like we said, made in 1981, but it was the setting was 1954
Yep.
in Florida. So there's a lot of there's a lot of peculiar, or I don't know, uh, cultural um, specifics of that area inside the movie. So
Oh, I mean, definitely.
yeah,
It it
I just
it is what it is. Back. I mean, and that's the thing. Back in the day, in the 80s and 70s and even in the 90s in some cases, they were able to do so much different shit than what they are today. And I mean, Kim Cattrall in this movie is pretty much the hottest chick in the world. I mean, let's be
She
honest.
has aged. She's aged well. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
she has. And then another thing is the nickname that they give her character, Lassie.
Oh yes, that was. That scene was. Oh man, that's one of the like. There's a few iconic scenes from that movie. No matter how many times you've watched it or how long you've watched it, they just stick out, and that's definitely one. However, the Lassie nickname, I think she screamed more like a banshee during that scene, but I get it.
I was about to say,
Yes.
but oh my god, and the guy trying to get her to shut up.
Ends up shoving a dirty jock strap in her mouth. I'm sitting there watching. I was like, just stick a sock in it. And then he reaches and grabs the dirty jock. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's definitely one of those movies where it's just like, what the fuck? Like, and that's the thing. Those movies were able to do some of that stuff. Where I think today, if you tried to, and you asked me this question about if I think they could make this movie today, I think they could, but honestly, it'd be kind of like what National Lampoon tried to do to be relevant. With like Dorm
So
Days, all them movies.
I think, like, okay, I did bring that up. I'll go ahead and elaborate on that. When I was watching the movie, because remakes are a thing nowadays, and so whenever I'm watching an old movie from the 80s or 70s, I'm like, oh, if they were to remake this today, what cast would be good? So as I'm watching it, I'm thinking the Broken Lizard Gang. I think if they remade this movie, they would give it justice, and I think they'd bring the right humor to it. Of course, an updated version or whatnot, but but then again, they're kind of old for those parts, considering that it revolves around high schoolers. So if they played like the adult characters and had some younger people in their comedians, it'd probably work out. So as long as they gave their artistic lendings to it, I guess. So
Well, yeah, and I mean, at the same time, this movie was kind of revolutionary back in '81. I mean, you did have Caddyshack, which kind of it was hit or miss as a comedy. They had the comedy, then the seriousness, and then they went outlandish with a gopher that could dance to a song.
oh yeah,
But with
well,
Porky's, I mean, you had, like you said, you had the stereotypes of that era of
mhm.
1954 in which it was based. You had Alex Karras, who plays Porky's brother, who's a cop. You have Porky, who is the proprietor of a strip club in the Everglades, who's a major pain in the ass.
Oh, he's definitely the antagonist for sure.
Oh,
Yes.
definitely. I mean, he is such an asshole. But that's the thing. All these characters play a tremendous role within this movie. Like
I
in
think
the
movies like this. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you. There's a
No,
little
no,
bit of
you're
a
good.
delay.
Um, I think these coming of age movies is what really nailed home what people in the 80s probably were feeling. I mean,
Mhm.
granted, I was born in the 90s, so I can't really say, oh, hey, the 80s were a blast, man. But
So this movie in particular, and I want to harken back. You had brought up saying you were born in the 90s. I was born in the late 70s, so I was 77. So when this movie came out, I was only what 4 years old. But I remember when yeah, right, showing my age. Actually, the first movie I was ever in the theaters for was Star Wars in '77. But I
damn.
digress. Anyway, I remember finding this movie in my parents' movie collection, probably some 11, 12 years old. That time period for us young guys when we're starting to find things out about ourselves, you know. And of course, it being a TNA movie, and I'm like, ooh, what is Porky's? Because if you remember the box, I think it had like this hot chick on there, and
Yeah.
you could see, yeah.
A
So I was
guy
like, ooh,
looking through or an eye looking through the peephole. Yep.
yeah, that's what it was. And I'm like, when you're that young, you're thinking porn. Granted, it's not even soft porn, but back then it was almost taboo for somebody of that age to watch. And I remember finding it and waiting for my parents to go out. And as soon as I did, I grabbed that. Yes, it was VHS. I pop it out, pop it into the VCR, and I was amazed. That was probably the first adult comedy movie I had ever watched in my entire life was Porky's. So that set the stage.
Yeah, I wish mine would have been Porky's, but mine was actually Animal House.
Okay. I mean, you being born in the 90s and that being your first raunchy adult comedy, that's impressive. Very impressive.
Well, I mean, my parents, it was the TV version of it, so it was like edited, and it took out kind of the parts where it'd been like, well, should the kids see this? But I mean, even at that, it was still edition. Like, yeah, it was still one of those movies that made you think like, wow, you know, how Porky's was able to get away with some of the stuff they did, how Animal House got away with some of the shit they did. But like we said, you know, it is definitely a product of its time, but such a great movie.
Well, I think movies like that paved the way for other movies down the road. Just like the opening scene where Pee-wee's, the alarm clock's going off. He's got that morning wood going on. And his mom barges in and he flips over and, well, about breaks it. But it paved the way for movies like, you know, I want to say late 90s, early aughts, Superbad, American Pie, movies like that. That they, you know, you harken back to movies like Porky's, and nowadays you're like, okay, I mean, this raunchy comedies of today is nothing new because it's already been done. It's just a different story. But the element of that raunchiness, that coming of age that you had talked about, because a lot of those movies are actually based around, you know, high schoolers and et cetera, et cetera. So it's always been a trope to do movies like that, and they're typically pretty good because of that raunchiness factor in it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and granted, Porky's would have 2 sequels, and then I think they kind of had like someone did try and soft reboot it, but it didn't really work out.
Did not know that. I have watched 2. It's been a long time. I don't think I liked it as much as the original. I don't remember anything about it.
Well, and that's the thing. I think a lot of what it was back then was that, hey, nonsensical nonsense, how are you doing? Kind of weird how we're, you know, on the YouTube channel recording this and all of a sudden nonsensical nonsense pops out. Like, God, that's like a fourth wall within a fourth wall break there, folks. But no, and that's the thing, like Alex Karras as the sheriff in this movie, and yet you have the bikers, you have the biker kid that's mad at the Jewish guy because he get his ass kicked by the Jewish guy, and then, you know, they have to have the slurs in there, and it's just like,
yes, Tim's 50s greaser racist redneck father on a 50s Harley. Yes,
yeah,
he fit all those asshole tropes for sure.
Oh, definitely. And that's the thing that always got me was just like, I always look at movies, and there are movies where, you know, the kids of today look back on it differently and go like, you know, maybe they pushed a little too far, but that's not what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and maybe they're right, but at the same time, to us, it's just a movie. Like, I mean, yeah, at the same time, like, what he's saying about the Jewish kid isn't great, a nice thing to say about someone.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like not like the actor was meaning any of it.
And no, the actor themselves. I mean, it was written in there. I mean, yeah. I looked at it like this. It was teaching a moral lesson that, you know, racism and anti-Semitism is wrong. Because even like in the locker room scene, when Tim is sitting there going, let's go fly a kite. Let's go fly a kite. Like, you know, KITE. Somebody had a sign, but like, dude, you're not even being a smart racist. It's not kite. It's KIKE. And he's just sitting there dumbfounded. It was pretty funny, I thought. So, I mean, that satire element in the movie when it comes to teaching those lessons about racism is bad. And and being tolerant of other people and stuff. I thought it added a good positive note and element to that movie. It just wasn't all just raunchy comedy. There was actually some moral lessons there. Other parts of it probably hasn't aged so well compared to now and then, but that overall general idea of, hey, racism is bad was always a good element that I always picked up in the movie. So
I love when the mean teacher, she's like, I would like to line up these
oh,
boys and I can find the perpetrator. I know what they look like.
there's a mole on the tallywhackers, what they called it. The tally. She was blicker, but they all called her ball
Ball breaker.
breaker.
Yeah.
She was also a cock blocker too, but especially when it came to that one coach in Honeywell. Coach Honeywell is his name. Kim Cattrall's character. Yes.
That is so funny though, that whole scene where Honeywell and the other coach are having sex and the students are losing their mind laughing. And one of the older coaches is kind of like, what the hell is that?
Oh yeah, that one the one coach that was trying to prod the other coach into sleeping with her upstairs, he lost his shit. Like
Yes,
like his face turned around. I was watching, and every time I watch this movie, and you can also see it in the office scene when they're talking about, let's do a police lineup of all the tallywhackers. She can point out because had a mole on it. They're laughing so much. They're so into that role. It's like I think they're really laughing. Like that just wasn't them acting. Like they were really into that scene. They were having like really good chemistry with it.
Well, the principal is trying to understand why Ball Breaker is wanting to line these men up and look at their units because she notices the one that, she was grabbing onto, which the shower scene. Oh my God, I felt so bad for that guy.
So the shower scene, the Lassie scene, and of course at the end when they tear down Porky's bar, and the egg scene in the beginning, I think for me are probably the most 4 iconic scenes in this whole movie. That
definitely. Yes. When they tear down. Well, see, here's the thing: when they get thrown out of Porky's, one of their classmates makes an attempt each time to go back there and comes back after getting their ass kicked.
Yes, Mickey would never learn his lesson the entire time.
Yeah. And Mickey finally comes back near the end of the movie, and he has really gotten his ass kicked pretty bad, to the point where Kavanaugh, who is like the deputy of the town, comes and says, you know what, we need to take Porky down. And
Kavanaugh, the police of that town, was Mickey's brother. I think it was his brother.
Yeah. I think his name was Kavanaugh, or maybe that was the biker. It's been like a long time since I've seen this film, but I can still remember.
I sent you the link. You didn't watch it?
Dude, like I've been busy with everything else going on now. Like,
you're good if you do use that link, because it was the only place I can find it where it was streaming. Yeah. It was, just so everybody out there knows, it was on OMG Flicks with an X.org. And if you watch any movie from that website, have your ad blocker up. Every time I paused it, played anything, just like go 10 seconds back so I can, it's just pop up. I'm like, oh, I bet Steven's having a headache with this too. But you saved yourself the headache.
Yeah, if I'm going to watch that, like it was on Amazon Prime a while back, and I was just like, oh, I should watch this movie, and I didn't. I had it saved to the watch list, and then all of a sudden my wife's like, well, let's watch a different movie, and it's like, okay. So then we watched a different raunchy comedy, and yeah.
I used to own a copy of it. I had it on DVD, but I don't even think I have a DVD player anymore.
And we do say this: the movie that we got at Porky's, they should have just made it the unrated version. I swear to God, if they have an unrated version of Porky's somewhere, I feel like there wouldn't be much new footage that we hadn't already seen here
No,
in the
I don't
actual
think they
footage.
really did movies like that back then. I think what we saw is what came off the cutting room floor. I don't think they,
Yeah.
there was like director's cuts or unrated versions or anything. But you never know. Maybe one day they'll find some old locked up 8 millimeter reels. And be like, oh, let's recut this.
Yeah.
Might be good.
I mean, and that's the scary thing. Like, if you could have imagined the bloopers for that movie.
Oh,
Like,
the blooper reel for that movie, I bet it would be
uh,
amazing. It would be just gold. It would be gold.
well, exactly. And you know, when me and Blazin were talking about what we wanted to do for this show, uh, you know, even just talking about Porky's probably isn't enough, because a lot of those movies in the 80s, it seemed like they tried to top themselves in the comedy realm. I mean, yeah, you had the John Hughes comedies, but those ones were dealing more with teen issues and, you know,
Oh, I don't
and
know. I think this one dealt with with Pee Wee's teen issue, is trying to lose his virginity the entire time of the movie.
I laugh when he's like, the
Um,
condom's too big, and the big guy's just like, well, wrap it or
just tie a
tie it.
knot in it.
Yeah, like that's gonna work.
Oh, I
And I
liked
mean,
when Wendy gave him that huge freaking condom, and then God, I forgot what character it was, but he takes it and he blows it up. And he's going around like humping other female students, and then he turns around and there's a whole fucking ball
ball
breaker,
breaker.
and then the air comes rushing out of it, and it sounds like it was a balloon squeaking, losing air. I'm like, condoms losing air don't even sound like that. What the fuck?
Uh,
Speaking of sound effects, when Porky's bar was being torn down, I swear to God, it sounded like somebody's right off camera with a huge sheet of metal just banging on it.
yeah, and I mean, when they tore that down at the end, like, it is funny as hell. Because it's just like, okay, guys, you're high school students and you're making this look like it's a paramilitary operation.
They did, absolutely. It was like Navy SEAL Team 6 going in to take down Porky's. Yep.
Our mission is no longer take down Osama bin Laden, it is take down Porky's. Well, and that's the thing. Like, the ending is just like, okay, guys, you're high school students. You should not be knowing how to do all this shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, sawing through the boards and all that, okay, I can understand that. That's easy. But like, I mean, they had, in like just 5 minutes of planning this out, it was like, well, Jesus, what? You call the 81st Airborne to help you out too?
Yes. Dude,
Uh,
I every single car in there, of course this movie was set in the 50s,
yeah.
54. Every single car in there looked like it was brand new off the freaking showroom floor.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it was funny because you have all these affluent white kids from like the coastline going to the Everglades to redneck freaking Central, walking up in a strip bar, being like, "We want to pay for some pussy." And,
I mean, yeah.
they were
And that
way
was the
way
thing.
way out of their element.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was just like, okay, you're going to the Everglades to a strip club, but yet, like you said, they probably lived on the coast and there's no strip club near you guys. Like, I mean, come on, it's Florida. Let's be
Yeah,
honest. And it's just like, really, there's no strip clubs in the whole state of Florida? Oh, but no, we gotta go to the Everglades just to find the lonely strip club.
I don't know. I don't know my stripper club culture down in Florida in the 50s. Honestly, didn't think strip clubs were a thing in the 50s, but I didn't know a lot of things were around in the 50s, like that big giant size gag condom. I didn't know gag gifts were like a thing like that back then. I was shocked when I saw that. I was like, I forgot about that part. I'm like, where'd this
Good
huge condom
God.
come from in the 50s? I didn't, but hey.
The one thing that surprised me is they didn't get Chevy Chase or Bill Murray to be in this movie.
So, yes, well, it wasn't a big production
Well, no.
for actors of that caliber at that point in movie making. I don't think.
It was pretty much the probably unknowns. I mean, I would be shocked if Kim Cattrall had done anything to that point. Maybe soap operas, because those were big in. I mean, kind of still are, and um, and maybe that's how she got her start. Who knows? But I think this movie catapulted for what she would later do in the '90s with Sex in the City. Um, but yeah, I mean, this movie did pretty much put a lot of those actors on the map. And sadly, we've lost quite a few of them. Um, and and to be honest, I think this movie is a testament to '80s raunchy comedy. I really
Mm-hmm.
do, because yeah, it did have two sequels after this, and like I said, kind of like a soft core reboot. But I mean, it's just this movie alone. If you've never seen any of the other ones, you're really not missing much, because they didn't understand what they had with Porky's, and I think Porky's too kind of tried to jump the shark in an absolute different direction.
Like I said earlier, I don't ever remember watching Porky's 2. I know I did. But anybody out there has never seen the Porky's franchise, literally, if you just watch the first one, that's all you need to enjoy it. It's
Yeah.
the first one stands alone by itself. No sequels were actually ever needed, I think.
Well, and that's the thing, it always did bother me when you have these great movies and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we had one good shot. Let's try and see what else we can do with it, and like you said, Porky's didn't need any sequels. Um, but the same could be said with one thing that did shock me and does to this day is they didn't try and make it into a TV series, because they did that with Animal House.
Did they really? I did not
Yes.
know that.
Yeah, they
Hmm.
did. They did it with Animal House, and then of course when we got the later National Lampoons like Dorm Days and all that, it was pretty much an attempt to try and go back to what had worked, because by that point National Lampoon in the late 2000s was on its deathbed. And I mean, the magazine
Yes.
had pretty much stopped circulating, and it was just hanging on by a thread with these movies that they made. And none of the movies that they tried to replicate what had worked in the '80s didn't really work in the 2000s or in the
I,
'90s as well, because
I
you're
think some of them did. I think, like I said, Super Bad and I think American Pie worked.
well,
Although after,
yeah.
but after they came out with sequel after sequel after sequel after sequel, it just that's what really just killed the franchise.
Well, definitely. And for all those that are joining us, we're not just talking, we are talking about Porky's, but in the general area of it, I think we're also talking about comedy and how far it's come today. I
Yeah,
mean, and that's the thing. You know,
I go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, even with how comedy was like with the Mel Brooks era of the late '70s to '80s to now. I mean, Blazing Saddles. If we really want to go down that rabbit hole, that movie could not be made today.
I disagree, but that's a debate for another day.
And I mean, with Animal House, could they get away with, you know, some of that today? Maybe. But I think it would have to be like a finer line than what, because you got to realize the censors and all that, I'm sure they had their finger ready to hit that button and say, nope, this movie will not be made.
I think in a lot of way, I mean, movies have become less censored. I mean,
Well,
in
yeah.
some aspects, aspects, they're definitely more restrained. But I also think that sometimes when certain elements of a certain or particular art forms are restrained, it has those artists, depending on their art, to come up with different creative ways. So I think it's like a double edged sword. Yes, it's bad in some ways, but yes, it can be good as well. So
Well, and that's the thing, comedy has to evolve. What would work back in, like we said, in the 80s probably didn't. It probably still worked in the 90s, but then you got to keep evolving with the times.
mhm.
And that's why I say, and like we touched on the question you had asked earlier about could Porkies be made today? Yeah, but I think there'd be so many different, like, in your face messages, where back then it was kind of like there was the messages, there was the
Mhm.
political undertones, but I don't think it would be as bad as today, because a lot of the comedy movies have to have that. Well, back then it was okay to say this, but now, it's kind of like we can't touch on it.
I don't know. So there was a scene in Porky's. It was the prank phone call Pee Wee played on Wendy, where he called
Yeah.
the deadbeat diner, which I think calling a diner a deadbeat, I think is just an awesome name. But anyway, where he calls and it's that old phone prank, and I totally forgot this is the movie that coined it, the Michael Hunt freaking prank phone call where you call like, hey, I'm looking at my. He was like, he calls you like, hey, a friend of mine was supposed to show up there. I'm calling to see if he's there. And when he's like, well, what's his name? He goes, Michael Hunt. And he goes, you just call him Mike Hunt. She's over the loudspeaker. I had totally forgot. I didn't forget about that prank phone call or that joke. I mean, it's been around for decades. I just forgot where it came from. This is the movie it came from. So
I had even forgot about that scene. God, I
yeah.
should have watched that link you sent me, but
Like I
that's the
said, I
thing.
watched it and I got a whole bunch of notes over here with different scenes.
Like, I mean, the shower scene, like we kind of glossed over, that scene in particular, like they're watching the lady shower and Pee-wee gets blocked by a student and he's like, "Move your ass." So then Ball
Yes.
Breaker comes in and she sees one of them with his unit
Tallywhacker.
tallywhacker uh
Tallywhacker.
wagging in the fucking little peephole. So what does she do? She like zeroes in on it and just friggin' yanks on it while his friends are laughing at him, not trying to
They
help
set
him
him
out of this
up. I
situation.
think it was funny. Like she's got this grip on it. She puts her foot up on the wall. Like she's really just like she's trying to like pull
Rip it
his
off.
entire body, or not just rip it off, but pull him entirely through
Uh,
that little itty bitty hole. It was
yeah.
hilarious. She was. Ooh, she really wanted that. She really wanted to bust that guy.
And yeah, when she's telling the principal how she wants to find the perpetrator, I mean that principal alone has got to be like, oh my god, how did I ever hire this lady? Like lawsuits would happen. And he's like, so let me get this straight. You want us to line these boys up, and you can tell us what they look like from their tallywhackers. And the
that,
two people in the back are just dying laughing. Like, I wonder if I could find that on TikTok.
oh, that one coach was like, "Well, we can go a step farther and call the police station and get a sketch artist down here. We can put up we can put wanted posters up like, have you seen this prick?"
Yeah, it is what it is back in the day. But see, that's the thing, is that so much. Oh god, I found it. All right, I will share the screen for this one because this is, oh my god.
Good, it's a good scene to share. And this is one of those scenes where I think the actors like were really into the whole entire part. Like it was less of them acting and them just getting into it.
But I think this is the only way to find that boy. Now that penis had a mole on it. I'd recognize that penis anywhere. In spite of the juvenile snickers of some, this is a serious matter. That seducer and spoiler must be stopped. He's extremely dangerous. And, Mr. Carter, I'm certain that everyone in this room knows who that is. He's a contemptible little pervert who's
a spellbreaker.
Well, I'm sorry. But I've got him now, and I'm not going to let him slip through my fingers.
But it did slip through her fingers.
Give me 5 boys for a few minutes. The coaches can be present. Tommy Turner and any 4 boys you see fit to choose. And we can put a stop to this menace. And it is a menace. Well, what are you going to do about it?
5 young boys in the nude, a police lineup, so that you can identify his tallywhacker. Please, can we call it a tallywhacker? Penis is so personal. Penis is so personal.
We can put hoods over their heads to avoid embarrassment. Now listen, we have got to do it as distasteful as it is. I know it's him. That had a mole on it. And that mole is the key to it.
Miss Fabrica, do you realize the difficulty of your request? Now, I would be very happy to apprehend the young man myself. Can you imagine what the Board of Education would say if you were granted a lineup in order to examine their private their private parts for an incriminating mole?
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Carter, I think I have a way out of this. Call the police, and we have them send over one of their sketch artists. And this ball breaker can give a description. We can put up wanted posters all over school.
You could just tell the principal's trying to not lose it.
Immediately to view the ball breaker.
You had brought up blooper reels earlier. I bet this scene, they had many takes.
As it is armed.
Oh, I'm sure. I love that. We'll put on the wanted poster, armed and dangerous.
In the girl locker room at Angel Beach High
Oh my god. Yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like, they're talking about the Board of Education getting involved. Even back then, I am sure that would have been a publicity nightmare for that school. Not only did she want to, and she later says, well, in order for discretion, we could put hoods on them. And it's just like, oh my god, like, this teacher, honestly, you're watching that scene and going like, how in the hell would that teacher get away with, even though the students in the shower scene were in the wrong, they were invading the women's privacy, but I mean, she literally grabs the guy's tallywhacker with like such a grip on there, and the other kids are laughing because they're like, oh, she's got something. And the poor kid's just trying to get out of there, and it's just like, oh my god. But that's the way this movie was.
I think today's episode is brought to you by the letter T for tallywhacker. I'm sorry, I just find that word tallywhacker so fucking hilarious.
I know. All I can think of is the Count from fucking Sesame Street going like, the word of today is tallywhacker.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. So movies this old, they didn't have a whole lot of brand
filter.
placement or product placements. So you don't see like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all that shit splattered all over the fucking scene. But
Yeah.
there was one thing that stood out. I watch old movies like this, like all those little details, like within props and stuff. Like, oh, that prop shouldn't be there. It's out of time for that period. I don't know what it is. I got OCD for that shit. But there was a beer that Meat. By the way, anybody with the nickname Meat that has a potential for a scholarship to go to Princeton. No, I mean he didn't get it, but I'm
No.
just like no. But he was drinking a beer called Regal Ale. So I looked it up. It was brewed in New Orleans, and it's been discontinued. So I was kind of sad about that. But I don't know. It was just a little tidbit of factoid. Nothing important.
Oh
But
yeah, I mean definitely back in the day, product placement probably back in the day wasn't as big. I mean, yeah, you would see the old Coca-Cola little plastic cups in movies back in that time. But I mean, it's not
yeah,
like they're like, "Oh, hey, look, brand placement," you know.
yeah. Well, that's
Where
just a testament to our time where ad revenue is like one of the hugest things that we spend money on. To tell you the truth, but
well, yeah, and I mean, nowadays most movies if they do have that, it's trying to sell the product. I mean, heck,
yeah. Well,
eh,
that's where some of the movies get their financial backing is from
mhm.
all these companies. Like, hey, we'll invest in your movie to make if you advertise our brand in your movie. So yeah,
Well, yeah, and that's the next major thing about this is that if they would have had some brand placement in this movie, do you think they would have went overboard with it, or do you think it would have been
I don't
just
think it would. I don't. I hate to say that I think ad or product placement takes value away from a movie because it's so all over the place now. But I think in some ways it does. I think it because when you're watching a scene in this movie, like I said, had no brand placement. When you're watching this movie and its scenes, like you're you're paying attention to the scene. You're not sitting here watching, and all of a sudden Coca-Cola, like Squirrel. You can actually appreciate the movie for what it is. So
well, definitely. And as we uh keep talking about some of the key scenes in this movie is what it is. It's an 80s masterpiece that
I
honestly,
thought you were going to call it an '80s masturbation movie at first.
not gonna touch that subject. But no, I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people probably saw that scene with Kim Cattrall, and I mean, hey,
And they were probably screaming like a banshee too.
I love how he got so involved with trying to find out why she was called Lassie while they're having sex. It's like, dude, focus on the task at hand. Like, there's no way this chick in real life would have ever found you of any importance.
Well, the few scenes that led up to the buildup of the laundry room, I guess that's where all
Yeah,
the
the
dirty,
laundry
yeah.
room.
The previous coach was like, "We'll just get her up there," and he was like, "Oh no, no, no!" But he was dating her, and he was saying shit like, "Well, she's a virgin, she doesn't screw around, and blah blah blah. She's like pure." And
Oh
as
yeah, I
soon
remember
as soon as he got her up in there, she's like, she smelled all the dirty jock straps and got turned on. So yeah,
it's like, yeah, I don't think she's pure anymore, buddy. I think you've been
no, I don't
lied
think she
to.
ever was. So
No. And that's the thing, like this movie is in no way gonna be like, oh, hey, we're not gonna shy away from talking about sexuality. They don't.
no,
I
the
mean,
whole movie
it's
was.
yeah.
I mean, that was its main plot was sexuality. I mean, like I said, it was about Pee Wee's Pee Wee's quest to
Oh
learn
my
his
god.
virginity.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole movie revolved around sex, which isn't which isn't bad. I don't want
Well, no,
anybody
it
to
can be a plot
get that
piece,
away from
but
here. But
it
oh yeah,
wasn't
it was a
like
huge plot
yeah.
piece. So
I mean, because they first try, hiring a stripper at Porky's. They end up going into the cabin in the woods where
the cabin in the woods I thought was one of the most hilarious scenes. So I don't know who's ever watching this. If you haven't seen Porky's, what had happened was two of the friends hired this big black dude and this one stripper lady. I think her name was I got it down right here. Hold on, Miss Cherry something. Oh shoot.
and the scene
Anyway,
plays out where
so Miss Cherry Forever was her name. And so what they did is these two friends got a bunch of their other friends in on this idea of going to this cabin, which looked like a 50s trap house.
it really
Again,
does.
it did. It was a ran down shack. And the thing was, they were all the friends were going to line up and take turns getting laid, and and they were going to pay for it, of course. So they walk in, and the two friends are like, "Okay, everybody get naked," and they're like, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, she's got to check you for VD," and they're like, "How does she just look at us and tell that we have VD?" Well, she's an expert, apparently, is what he said. So they all line up. The two friends that are that's orchestrated this prank go into the room with her, and they start pretending like they're having sex, making the noises, bouncing up and down on the bed. And all of a sudden, the black guy's in there too, and he's got this machete with fake blood all over it. She smashes the window, and you can hear the dude go, "Why are you fucking my wife?" or some bullshit like that. And all the naked guys out, all lined up, are like, "What's going on?" And then one of the kids that was, that helped orchestrate this had fake blood all over him. So he comes bursting out of the freaking door, falling over like he's dying, and they all lose their shit. And they all book out the door when the black guy comes out with the machete. They turn tail, and all of them realize it was a joke. After a couple minutes,
for Pee-wee.
Except for Pee-wee. Pee-wee's hauling ass butt naked down the road, and that's when the cops pull up. The cops pull up next to him. Pull over. Let me see your license and registration. Yes, very, very good scene.
I just love how they're coming up on Porky, Pee-wee running, and they're just like, "Oh my god." I mean, and that's the thing. Like back in those days when they made these movies, like kids or teenagers today would probably watch this movie and be like, how are they not bringing him to the police station for indecent exposure or whatever, nude in public or whatever shit like that. And it's just like, because they probably realized at one point they did the same shit too.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, in some ways, and when it comes to things like that, it's gotten stricter over time. They take less. They're harsher. I agree. I mean, just like them, like tearing down the freaking Porky's bar and putting people's lives in danger and et cetera, et cetera. But again, it's a movie. It's fantasy. You can't. I don't like to judge it too much against reality, but I do see what you're talking about.
Well, and that's the thing, with this movie is that even though people would probably nitpick it to death, it is what it is, and that's a movie. And it's a funny movie. Like, it's definitely one of those movies of the 80s that was like, it was different, but it also didn't play up to, well, we're kind of like a high school version of Animal House. Let's be Animal House. It's not like that at all. It literally, as I say it, was the product of the early 80s. And they didn't try and go too over the top.
It was a product of the early 80s trying to recreate a movie recreate
70s.
a time setting of the 50s, actually.
Well, yeah.
So, and that's and it's weird because I've noticed this with other movies that are like made at a certain time, but it's representing the time. The time setting is representative of decades prior, and so they just hit on a lot of those tropes that you hear about in that time. So
Shut up,
that's what
Glick.
I got out of it.
Glick's over here trying to make fun of me because I used
Literally. I haven't been watching the comments.
Yeah, I kind of try and show comments every now and then. But
I have like I said, I typed out notes and I have my notes up on the side, so it's covering all the comments.
Well, hey, maybe one day Blazin becomes the co-host, the second chair of this show. I'm looking for one, but we're trying this out. We're seeing how it works. Who knows? Maybe I have a big, huge round table. I mean, Nonsensical Nonsense has 4 people on some of their shows.
God, Saturday nights though, it's a plethora of pranksters, delightfully engaging in shenanigans.
I don't know. When most people are accusing me of having my wife handcuffed to a radiator, that I don't know, but I mean, hey, maybe we're all living out a fantasy of we're back in those comedy movies, which I really don't have my wife handcuffed to anything. If anything, I'd be in a cage for that.
Well, I mean, if anything, you can tell that the creators of Nonsensical Nonsense definitely get their comedic aspirations from movies like Porky's. So, which is good.
It's a bunch of dick and fart jokes. That's what
Absolutely.
we are, and
yes,
we don't stray away from it.
Man, I don't care how old a person is. If you don't freaking find fart jokes funny when you're 50, you're not going to find them funny when you're 80. You can go funny somewhere else.
Well, and that's the thing. You look back on how some people found a lot of this funny, and literally it's stupid comedy is what made this movie what it was. And some people don't like it. I mean, hell, there's people that don't like what Monty Python did. There's people that don't like what Three Stooges did.
Well, I think a lot of times, and Porky's is a good example. People will watch it be like, oh, it's just nothing but dirty jokes. And it's really not. Like you said, like I was saying earlier, you peel back those layers of that onion and you get the satire poking fun at racism and how racism is stupid and, hey, drop all your differences. We can come together as friends and yada, yada, yada. I mean, those are real valuable moral lessons that anybody can take away. And of course, it's underneath this raunchy comedy of fart jokes and tit jokes and penis jokes and all that, because that's real life too. We have those things and we joke about it, and we all have these experiences that are awkward at times, and that's what they make fun of. And I think it's good within itself. Those raunchy jokes also bring the message that we're all human. We have awkward experiences. It's better just to laugh at them.
Well, and that's the thing, this movie has so many of the comedy troupes that have made comedy even back in the day. It's got the slapstick. It's got the, like you said, the satire, the coming of age, the how we were all at one point kind of like, we're becoming, I mean, guys, let's be honest. When we're seniors, some of us were like, hey, we're seniors, and we're listening to some of our friends tell us about, oh man, I had sex with this girl and that girl, and we're kind of just like, okay, cool, like sweet, and that's the thing. This movie pretty much is a calling card to what I'm sure a lot of teenagers felt. It was just like, oh, or not a lot of teenagers, mostly the deranged ones. Let's be honest, because a lot of shit they get away with in that movie. Like you said, in the Flophouse cabin. Like, how in your right mind are you gonna be like, oh yeah, this chick that's done this as her calling is gonna be able to tell that I have VD just by looking at me? Like, unless
she's an expert.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got a kid running down in the dark, stark ass naked, and you have the cops kind of going like, okay. It's like, it honestly was what some of our friends probably did in high school. Because let's be honest, as kids, we were kind of dumb.
Yeah, I have a story that involves a strip club, me peeing in a parking lot, and a cop. But that's for another night.
Oh man, I think that's the Saturday night. But
Yes, that would
and
be a
that's
Saturday night thing.
and that's the thing. Like, let's be honest. How many of us didn't have friends that would tell you about, oh hey, I peed on a cop car, or oh hey, I did this stupid thing the other night, and all that stuff. I mean, I'm surprised that they didn't try and make a Porky's movie based off of like kids in a church. Like, I think that would have been funny because like stories from the strip club. I mean, Glick, I can send you that link. You can come in and, we can share story times. Well, I've never been to a strip club. Never.
I have a couple strip club stories, like literally 2 or 3, and they all involve me getting kicked out. So, yeah.
Not gonna say I could see that, but
Yeah, I'm a smart ass. But that's what got me kicked out, was me being a smart ass.
okay, he wasn't touching the strippers, everyone.
No. I wasn't doing anything like that. No, it was just I was being a smart ass to either the bouncer.
You know what, Alyssa? Facts on facts. Facts on facts. Well, most women live longer because they're not as stupid as we are. And I hate to say it, guys, but a lot of us are idiots. I mean, hey, if you take over the show, it might be better than me hosting. I mean, right now I'm kind of going like looking at dead air, in a way. Blazin's doing amazing. Like I love what Blazin's doing, but
that's because I came prepared. I did my homework.
oh, okay, nerd.
I am a nerd.
God, I wish I had that.
So much of a nerd.
You know what? Maybe I have that.
I made sure I had time to watch this movie because 1, it's one of my favorites, and 2, I wanted it fresh. I wanted it fresh on the brain.
I need a Jeff. That's what I need. Just like for that nerd one, he could play it. Damn it.
Oh, you'll build those in time. Don't worry, you're good. Good.
Here we go.
Nerd, you're a fucking nerd. Nerd, you're a fucking nerd. And no one likes you. No one likes you.
Fair. I tell you what, though. I tell you what. I don't think inflation has really hit strip clubs as much as it has hit everything else, because back in the 50s, the tip a stripper was $1. Today in 2024, people still tip $1.
Today, you got to use a credit card for that.
True.
I didn't know where I was. I'm so sorry, folks. I did not know where I was going with that one, and
You are good.
I'm not going to explain the joke, everyone. But no, I definitely do think, and I want to say this, if anyone hasn't seen this movie, go check it out. I mean, you can buy the movie. It's worth the buy. You can watch it on, which surprised me, YouTube doesn't have it. I mean, honestly, with YouTube and free movies, I'm very shocked that they don't have that movie, because I mean, oh man, I would love to watch that on the free version of YouTube. But I've noticed with this show, we kind of either need a Jeff or we need a Glick, someone that knows what they're doing.
Read your private chat real quick. So, oh shoot, that was the wrong window. I apologize. So, do you have any like what was your favorite part of the movie? Like, out of the entire movie, what's your favorite scene?
That is such a good question. I think my favorite part of the whole scene is where the ball breaker wants to line these kids up and pretty much wants to be able to have like a police lineup of kids that are showing her their tallywhacker.
That word's never gonna stop being not funny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up. What's your favorite part in that whole movie?
You know, like I said, I hadn't watched it in a while, and I almost forgot about the part. It was the part in the flop house. It was another part of the movie where I thought that, like, every time they were laughing at each other and stuff, they seemed like they were actually so into that role. It made it seem like it was like a real event going on, and it's just when they're standing there all lined up and they hear all the sounds and they're looking at each other like, oh my God, what's going on? Are we about to die? And blah, blah, blah. I just think that was amazing. Like the pranks that they pull on each other. Amazing. From the eggs to that, to a lot of the other things. But yes, that scene I think was probably the pinnacle of pranks in that whole entire movie.
Well, Blazin, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I had a blast.
I love it. You are right. I think if we tried to do another hour of this, it would be more of a struggle fest. Which, let's be honest, some of the shows here, sometimes we hit nails on the head. Other times we do struggle sometimes. But hey, that's the podcasting business. But like I said, thank you again so very much. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Like I said, man, I will sit here and dork out on movies anytime.
Oh, definitely. And you're always welcome.
Cool. Sounds great.
So also, don't forget to check out other shows on the Nonsensical Network, like the Jarvis Podcast here on every Sunday. Almost said Saturday. I think that was bad. Before we started, I called this the Deluxe Edition Network. Oof. But also we have on Mondays, we have Men Caring for Men, which is a men's mental health show hosted by Glick. You'll also see me on that one with Connor. Tuesdays or every other Tuesdays, it's Dollars and Cents, which is going to become another new show hosted by Jeff. Wednesdays is Nonsensical Nonsense, which is hosted by Glick, featuring us just being us on a Wednesday. Thursdays, we take the day off for Talking Shit. That's SHTTT, who is now a new member on the network, hosted by Mark and Brian. Funny guys. They're going to have collaboration with a show that's on Friday called Glick's House of Music, where they will be talking with Richie Ramone of the Ramones. Saturday, we have the Open Door Challenge, where we share the link in the chat. People can come on as long as you show your face, because honestly, let's be honest, we've been hit with a lot of shit like that. And also, you can also go see Helen's mixtape, where Helen gives... God, how am I going to say this? She gives and interviews a bunch of great topics. So go check them out at the Nonsensical Nonsense Network. I'm Steven Jarvis. That's Blazin, and we will see you all next time.